or Shelley or anybody else. Don, you later.
Yeah.
On that. So I think it went very, very, very well. It was a lot of hard work put in by the faculty, staff, and administration in participating. It's just a lot of work. It's an amazing amount, but it has some useful purpose, not just to be graded, but to focus and to reflect. And I think it was a worthwhile effort, and I think we'll be happy about how we come out the other end. So thank you all. That's about all. I haven't seen anything from the campus in our local paper, and that usually means the good things because the headlines usually scream something bad. They usually don't scream anything very good. And so there's no controversies, and some things come down. I know there's been some changes since the last meeting. In political changes at national level, which will have some impact, probably in finance on the campus. And at the end, I'll mention a few more things. So, Don, you have a report.
Thanks, and good afternoon, everyone. I have a few things to update you all on. First, COVID-19, always on our mind. We, for the last several days, and I want to knock on wood, have had single digits of active cases on campus, which is a really great trend. We had risen to somewhere in the 60s several weeks ago and then dropped back down into the 20s and the teens. In the last couple of days, it's been 5 or 6 active cases. We have a positivity rate right now of about 0.6%, and that's with well more than 32,000 on-campus COVID tests. So we're doing really well. Students and employees are getting vaccinated. These are positive signs for what the fall semester will look like, as I'll share shortly. You know, we got where we are by advertising and adhering to what we've framed as a "we, not me" philosophy. We've done a lot of testing and tracing, and we had great faculty and staff involvement in that. Student health services has been miraculous in the work that they've done, and we've had great volunteers helping to keep all of this going. So it's been a really busy work, but we're pleased with where we are right now on COVID-19 management. Second item I want to share is that the Chancellor was on campus several weeks ago to announce the next round of a SUNY program called Prodigy, which is an acronym for Promoting Recruitment, Opportunity, Diversity, Inclusion, and Growth. And that program has the goal of hiring 1,000 underrepresented faculty, including women in STEM fields, by 2030. The Chancellor chose to come to SUNY New Paltz for this announcement because of our success in that program and our other work on diversity, equity, and inclusion. And 8 of our new first-year faculty have been selected to participate in this program. I think that's probably certainly more than any of the other comprehensive campuses. So we're pleased with that. Middle states, as Eli said, we had our site visit recently. I want to thank College Council members who met with the review team. The preliminary finding, and I have to emphasize that this is preliminary, is that we will be accredited in June. We'll be accredited, but that decision and any particular recommendations of improvements that we have to make won't be final until the commission meets in June. The team chair uploads the team's report tomorrow. We have a week as a campus to respond to any conclusions that we disagree with, and then it moves on from there. It was really rewarding to be able to refer back to the 2011 report from our previous reaccreditation review and talk about all the progress that we've made over the last 10 years on various things that the review team commented on back in 2011. They gave us several recognitions and commendations for that progress. One was that they noted with support the continuous improvement model of strategic planning that we've engaged in, rather than a fixed term like a 5-year strategic plan. They noted the campus's commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion, and they called out the establishment of an LGBTQ coordinator position on campus, the formation of human resources, diversity, and inclusion to expand the function of that office, highlighted our building renaming as examples. They praised the attention that the campus paid to faculty development during the pandemic to support remote instruction, and also the way that we've managed the COVID-19 challenges. They highlighted also the culture of assessment to student learning, which was also commented on in 2011. So those are a couple examples of some of the pieces that we were praised for doing. I'll say a couple things about commencement planning. We're planning face-to-face commencement ceremonies. We have set these at reduced gathering size so that we can avoid some of the additional stipulations that come into play if we have more than 200 participants in an outdoor event. So these will be streamlined, socially distanced, small gatherings, masked. We will live stream the ceremony for parents who can't attend, for parents, and for graduates who can't attend. We're allowing no audience members so that we can stay below that 200 limit. It's not a perfect arrangement, but it comes, we think, as close as we can come to meeting what most students seem to want in a graduation ceremony. And we certainly hope that next year we can have a live ceremony with college council members joining us on in the ceremony. We've been paying a lot of attention to campus climate. This was heightened, for example, by the Derek Chauvin trial for the murder of George Floyd, which has been on everybody's mind, including the minds of our students for the last couple months. People breathed a sigh of relief at the verdict in that case, although many are withholding judgment about what this all means. And I think seeing it as a small step in the right direction, but merely that, and lots of work remains in moving towards the inclusive campus that we want to be. The shooting deaths of 6 Asian women in Atlanta, along with 2 others, have really heightened sensitivity of our Asian and Pacific Islander students on campus. We met last week with a group, a student organization titled APISA, the Asian and Pacific Islander Student Alliance. We listened to the concerns of some of their experiences on campus. They spoke very frankly and eloquently about some of the biases that they encounter, some of the ways that steps that the campus could take to improve their experiences on campus. That meeting included students in that group, a number of administrators. We asked Rennie Scott Childress and Haley Hershenson as faculty governance and student governance leaders to be part of that, because some of the concerns that had been communicated to us relate to the student climate and interaction on campus and to some academic issues. We had a dialogue sometime last month on dismantling racism. This is a continuation of a series that we've been doing. We had a marvelous distinguished speaker series presentation by an oral historian in New York City, Zahira Lee, who's an expert on Malcolm X. But he spoke about the importance of storytelling, but also the importance of listening so that we can learn about the experiences of other people. Our School of Education in the Development Office organized a panel presentation, very moving panel presentation on diversifying our educational systems, including K through 12 and higher ed. Our alum Ilyasa Shabazz was part of that panel, as was our Dean of Education, and 3 superintendents of color from the Mid-Hudson region who all spoke about their individual experiences and their recognition of the need to diversify K through 12, in particular education. Another piece along that same line that I'll mention very briefly is that we formed a university police department advisory committee that's progressing very well in its work. It includes law enforcement expertise, alumni, faculty, student representation. And the purpose of that group is to help our university police department continue on the path that it wants to be on, of being an accountable community policing organization, building stronger relationships with the campus community, continuing some of the training that that department is so well known for. I'll say a couple things about fall semester. We're planning to have the great majority of our courses be on campus and face-to-face. Greater fill rate of our residence halls. The vaccines that are now available and that people are taking advantage of will make a great difference for us. We're waiting with bated breath whether the CDC guidelines for reduced social distance from 6 feet to 3 feet that have been recommended for K through 12 schools will apply to colleges and universities, and that will make a great difference in our classroom capacity. It will also create more latitude for in-person activities, including co-curricular experiences. So we're looking forward with some optimism to what the fall semester will look like compared with what we've been through this year. One of the pieces that I always emphasize when I talk about this is that we, along with other SUNY campuses, have zero evidence of in-class transmission of COVID-19, at least when everybody is masked. And it's very likely that masking will remain a requirement in the fall. I'll end here on picking up on a theme that I spoke about in my last report to you on March 18 about some of the recent rankings of colleges and universities. I've shared with the faculty that in a recent report that we're all a little skeptical about rankings, but as long as people are doing them, we'd much rather be included than not. One of those that I think I shared is that we were included in a ranking of the top 50 most affordable colleges in the country. We were included in another ranking. We were number 25 in the country in a ranking of best value colleges across the US. And we were also the highest ranking SUNY campus on a list of the top 100 best public colleges and universities in the country. And the significance of that is highlighted by who was at the head of that list. In the number one rated campus was the University of Michigan, number 2, University of Virginia, number 3, UCLA, and number 4, UC Berkeley. So it was it's a great recognition to be included in a listing like that, and to be the highest ranking SUNY on that list. So with that, I'm happy to stop and respond to questions or comments that any of you may have.
Anybody? So what's been the toughest challenge with the pandemic on campus?
Well, I'm sure we all have different ideas on that. I think certainly the stress that students have experienced from remote instruction, from all the stringencies that they've lived with, that's been one. Supporting faculty and staff who are, in the case of faculty, teaching remotely, often providing care to young children, in many instances serving as teachers for their own kids in K through 12 schools. And we know that's been a real stress, and we know that's a stress that's fallen particularly heavy on women faculty, and in many instances early career women faculty. So those are a couple of the challenges. I think the uncertainty about how this semester and this year would play out, the lingering uncertainty about what the fall will look like, and how we manage the shifting guidance have all been some of the biggest challenges. I don't know if any of my colleagues or Haley or Rennie want to chime in on that?
Yeah, I'm just wondering, what is it going to be, like a dam that bursts in the fall? The students come back on campus and fill up the dorms. Is there any sensitivity to what may be coming around the corner in terms of planning for next year?
Well, one of the pieces to manage there is that the COVID-19 is still going to be with us in one form or another, and so people are aware of this, and I think there's some either mixed emotion or mixed sensibility or reticence about what it will be like to be back on campus. So, we have a number of faculty who are just dying to be back in the classroom face to face with students. But some are a little reticent about what that will be like. And so managing those shifting expectations and those uncertainties, certainly part of what we're managing.
And so I know there's been a lot of challenges for everybody, and of course impressed by how they've been met by the faculty and staff. And I'm wondering, Haley, is the students, do they feel that it's been a real senior year, or is it just more of what was last year, second semester?
I think our seniors certainly do appreciate what President Christian mentioned about the efforts to create at least some sort of in-person commencement. That's something that, I was hearing from a lot of students. There's other things that certainly, as underclassmen, students look forward to that we, aren't able to do the same way that we would be able to do them. But at this point, I mean, students are kind of just taking what we can. I think the in-person opportunity for students that can to at least to come to campus, even if it's a brief ceremony, just to step foot on this campus. I have friends. I mean, I'm grateful personally to live in the town and to be working on campus and have a space to come to. But I have friends that are in their senior year that haven't even stepped foot on this campus either this entire year or this entire past semester. Or didn't have an in-person class. I mean, for me, this is my second semester. I'll be student teaching in the fall, but this is my last courses. And I had one in-person class this semester. And at the start of this semester, it had been 11 months since I had an in-person class. And that was just, I only have one, and I'm grateful to be able to have that. So, I think our students that are rising, seniors and juniors and sophomores are definitely looking forward to being able to have more in-person classes. I mean, that's something that administration has listened that students really need and are craving and want that back. Because the remote challenges, even though it's been more time, there's just so many, issues that persist.
Yeah, the interpersonal contact is something that really can't be replaced. But then on the other side of the way it looks like it's going to, our whole society is going to go forward, the remoteness and digital age has been pushed forward. So to some degree, the experience going forward for seniors is going to put them in a good spot in that respect.
Eli, I saw Julie had a hand up, but I wanted to add just one quick thing to what Haley pointed out, and that is that we're paying particular attention to our first year students here now who will be sophomores next year, who have never had a normal college experience, and our first year students this coming fall who have had their junior year spring semester messed up, and in most instances have had a very abnormal senior year in high school. And so those are students who will probably need some additional support and guidance.
Thank you.
Julie?
I was wondering what the role of vaccinations is going to play, if any, in terms of your strategy for, moving forward, or are they going to, I can't imagine they're going to be mandatory, but are there going to be filters for, if you have vaccinations, you can do this, you can't do this? How is that going to play a role? And what percentage of your staff and students are vaccinated, do you think, at this point?
Yeah, just aside, Julie, I spoke briefly with Don before, and some private schools are, as you're aware, making it mandatory. And, public university has a little bit different constraint, but I have my own views on it because, there are vaccinations in public schools. The problem, of course, is that it's an emergency utilization of vaccines. So it's not really totally approved. So, but Don, what do you think? Is there a percentage now, do you think, in terms of vaccination? Anybody have a feel for how far vaccination's gone now and is anticipated for the fall?
I don't know if we have those statistics, do we, Stephanie?
We don't have them specifically for SUNY New Paltz. So the other colleges that have done any surveying are all coming around 80%. 80% of students have at least received one shot. We have a means to volunteer, for people to voluntarily submit vaccination information, but it's been held up by a couple of logistical hurdles. So that should be going live soon, and then we'll have a better sense of our own community.
Anecdotally, I've been impressed when I talk with students about who's been vaccinated, and it's been many of the students I talk with being vaccinated, and we're also seeing from lots of different sources emails about this vaccination opportunity coming available, and people are seizing those, including our students. Haley?
I have a quick question. This might be for Stephanie.
Haley, go get it.
I was wondering, because I had some students mention this. So when you get tested on campus and you have to fill out the online, I think you know what I'm going to ask. And then it prompts you to say if you've had the first dose, the second dose, and when. I did have some students kind of expect that is the school trying to gather this data for the purpose of what Julie had asked. True? Is this data just for, if a student is positive?
So Upstate does not share that information with us. It's
Okay.
their use. I suspect that they're trying to collect data on, positive results, probably looking at, how many vaccinated people have breakthrough cases. But no, they don't share that information with us.
So,
Vinny, did you have a question?
I wanted to, before we leave Julie's question, one more piece I wanted to point out there, and that is that we're going to do everything we can to encourage students to be vaccinated, and we expect that SUNY will have a requirement that even if vaccination is not mandated, that every campus have vaccination capability for students at the start of the fall. And we're talking about nothing definite yet, but we're tossing around ideas of whether we can create more opportunity for students who have been vaccinated, like taking part in face-to-face meetings of student organizations and clubs and things of that sort. Maybe shifting some access potential if you've been vaccinated.
Great, thanks.
Thank you. Vinny, did you have something to say? No.
That's going to change it. Well, just a little different subject. So on the adult use marijuana regulations that are kicking in, Don, so is SUNY going to provide like guidance for all SUNY campuses to follow? I realize it doesn't take effect immediately, but it will soon.
I think maybe when we get to the conduct code changes, will that discussion respond to that question? I think it will.
Okay, good.
Okay, great. And so, anything else? So I think we've covered the COVID update, I think, unless there's anybody wants to add anything else in addition to that. Sounds like the campus itself has done marvelously well. And if it's down to single digits, that's kind of almost amazing. Of course, not because of small effort, but because of a great effort, and something could be proud of. And who knows what the future is going to be, but hopefully it will migrate even lower and lower. Yeah, Don.
I want to say one more thing about that, and I've probably shared this before with the College Council, but one of the reasons we've gotten where we are is the tremendous dedication of our students to adhering to masking, social distancing, avoiding large gatherings. They've been a real key in our success, and I think some of that reflects the great sense of community that's one of the characteristics of our campus. So thank you to you and your fellow students, Haley.
Good job. And now I think I'll ask Robin, because we have some information for some editing of the student handbook, apropos what Vinny brought up. So let's see.
Hello.
Yeah. Hi, Robin. Yeah. So I know there's some changes in the law that are reflected by the governor's signing of legislation that legalize marijuana for those persons under 21. So it's not illegal in New York to possess and grow to a certain extent. However, we do have a campus, and our handbook has some mention of marijuana, correct?
That's correct.
So are we going to do some editing?
So basically, in a nutshell, this is a state. Can you hear me?
Yes.
This is a new state law. So the president's memo to all staff, faculty, and students cited explained that yes, there is a change in New York state law, but we are still bound by federal law. We receive federal funds, institutions of higher education, all of our property is covered by different regulations. So I think the media announcement that marijuana is now legal in New York State is a little bit separate from the fact that it's prohibited on college campuses. So SUNY has sent some basic information from our counsel's office about marijuana regulations, and I've been in meetings with our counterparts in the legal office and all of the conduct offices. And so, this year there's only one subject to discuss today, and that's how does this change in state law impact our student handbook? And so I was just going to say that a lot of this wording is in what you've received, and I'll talk about those proposed changes, because a lot of what's in the president's memo to faculty, staff, and students is also right in this code. Basically, our old code, or the current code that runs through this June, basically stated that there was a category entitled narcotics, illicit drugs, and controlled substances. There's an addendum I'll talk about later as well. That's a more extensive attached document. So at this point, marijuana and its derivatives, including hash oil, plant seeds, resins, etc., fell under illegal drugs. So the main purpose of addressing this today is that we really need to extract that out of the illegal drug policy, and any reference to marijuana and its derivatives. So campus rule, the proposed edits basically say that in campus rule 12.00, that will still exist except for, and I don't know if your copy showed you a light gray area under 1.01 and 0.02, but those sentences need to be extracted from the current verbiage, in the sense that marijuana is now not listed as an illegal drug. Then we're creating a new code at the end of that section of the book. The proposed code is 25.00. And again, I want to note that we're calling it marijuana/cannabis because different legislation and communication, some calls it marijuana, some calls it cannabis. And to be inclusive, whether it's marijuana or cannabis, it's the same substance. The substance is now legal, but like alcohol, it has guidelines in New York State now about where you can use in public, or on school property or not on school property, in cars while you're driving, while you're sitting in cars, walking down a street versus in a public park. So in some ways, not completely, but in some ways, the marijuana law is now akin to not using marijuana under 21, not using alcohol, which is not an illegal substance under a certain age. So 25.00 as proposed, as you can see, says that no person shall use, possess, and a lot of this is in what the president has already shared with the community. No person shall use, possess, sell, purchase, cultivate, process, manufacture, or give away marijuana/cannabis or its derivatives like tinctures, topicals, edibles, etc., in any form, anywhere on the college campus. This includes SUNY property, public spaces, residence halls, office buildings, university-owned and leased buildings, parking lots, and at all SUNY events or while conducting university business, except for approved academic research. Medical marijuana is prohibited on campus property as well. I do want to make a statement about medical marijuana, and that's to say, that is a, this is our legal counsel as well as our disability counsel person in Albany. Certain people may have prescriptions for marijuana, but again, it's not permitted on a college campus. So in those cases, they've always been permitted to get released from their housing requirement. They have a right to choose not to live on campus because the federal law does not allow anyone to possess marijuana, even medical marijuana, on a campus. So I just want to make a point about that. The penalties begin with warning, probation. So this is similar to alcohol, but depending on the situation, could go all the way to expulsion or any special conditions like an educational program or some sort of requirement that we might add. Under this category, the general category, there are 3 subcategories. 01 would be sale, distribution, or provision to people under 21. And that's whether you're on or off campus, because we do enforce off-campus behavior by our students. So that's one behavior specifically, if you give or sell marijuana to someone under 21. And we have a similar code about giving alcohol to someone under 21. 25.02 is the sale, distribution, or provision of marijuana or cannabis, offering for sale, to sell, offer for sale, or attempt to distribute to any person. Again, because that's not, you're not supposed to do that, right? 25.03, driving while ability impaired or smoking marijuana or cannabis. Again, these are some, it's going to be probably the most challenging part of the new law is DWIs versus impaired driving and how enforcement is going to assess that if they stop a car. But here in our code, it's saying if you're on the college campus and you are stopped for impaired driving, whether it's alcohol or another substance, it's prohibited. So it will follow whatever the assessment is. They will, that university police would do with a student who's driving erratically or drives into a tree and they're impaired. It's still impaired driving. So I'll stop there because I just want to say that what's on the back of this page 2 is basically the fact that, just so you know, in more depth, whatever comes out in the final state document around what is state law, what are the fines for X, Y, Z, etc. University police always reviews that with SUNY and then provides us by June with any changes in that addendum in the handbook. So even in the last year or two, if there was a change in the fine for possessing marijuana or cocaine or whatever, it would be in that drug addendum, but it would be based on New York State law. So that's not really a council issue. The reason I noted it on the second page is the title of that addendum will change. Currently it says the institutional response to the use of illicit drugs and alcohol. When these changes all go into effect, we would like approval to rename that addendum institutional response to the use of alcohol, comma, marijuana/cannabis, and illicit drugs. So the only change to approve there is the addendum, which has always been based on, here are the laws, here are the penalties, here are your rights based on New York State law, that we're changing the title of that section, and the content will just again be based on what the current law is. And Chief Ridiak and Deputy Chief Corbacero assist me with making that information up to date. And when I say me, I mean also Michelle Combs, who's the new Director of Student Conduct.
Okay, so these suggested editing comes from SUNY Central? Or did you, are you the origin of these?
This is what the president shared, and what is in the body of 25.00 is really for people to know what is and is not allowed on SUNY campuses. So it's coming from the body of what we received in the way that we say no person, shall do X or Y, so students understand those boundaries.
And this will go in effect immediately, or does it go in effect for the summer semester? Or for
It's
fall?
really, we publish in July, June or July, and it's really effective in the fall. We change our handbook in the summer after your approval, and we edit, this is the time where we review with you the changes. But currently through summer sessions, we have our current code of conduct. This code of conduct is sent to all students in August, and they sign off that they know they're responsible for it.
So it seems pretty matter of fact just to change what is reflective of the current status of the law and the status of marijuana / cannabis.
Yes.
Both those terms in the handbook. Okay.
Yes.
Eleanor, did you have something to say? You're muted.
Haley had her hand up too, just in
Okay.
case you didn't see it.
I see Julie also, but so whoever wants to unmute, Eleanor, you would have to unmute.
I move that we accept these changes to the handbook.
Okay. Is there any discussion? Julie?
I just had 3 quick questions. One is, how does CBD, is that referenced as one of the derivatives, or does that not fall under this? Do we know the answer to that?
Stephanie looks like she's looking to respond.
I mean, it's a good question
think
because
it's the
technically
derivative.
CBD is a derivative, but CBD is legal. I don't know. So as Robin,
It does say tinctures. It does say tinctures, excuse me. I know that we discussed CBD at the state level, and it is considered a derivative still, I believe.
but it wouldn't be something we would enforce. So as Robin mentioned, we've had some guidelines from the state, but a few weeks ago, they were preparing their full guidance. And at that time, it was up to 16 pages. I have no idea how many pages they've cranked out on this for us, but we haven't seen it yet. So I expect that they may provide additional guidance that will affect exactly how this wording may end up. But perhaps what we need to say, because I don't believe there's even there's no regulation on CBD. I mean, a 15-year-old can have CBD. I don't know if there's a slight tweak that we need to make in the wording to exclude that. I don't know what that would look like, but we can certainly mull that over and see if there's a way to make that clear that derivative isn't included.
Yeah, I would say that it is, arguably includable, but certainly not the way New York law is enforced. But there is some controversy on the federal level whether CBD is a controllable derivative or not. And I think that it's not necessary to be any more specific in the handbook. That's my view. And Haley, did you have something? Did you have your hand up?
Yes, I had a quick clarifying question about the language. So just to clarify, so the language would include those lines that Robin read about any person under the age of 21. I'm a little bit confused about if those lines are still being included on top of the no person shall use and that paragraph under the green highlighted section. So I think that might confuse students as like, you know, that no person and then it says that under the age of 21. I think it should just say no person so that there's no confusion there.
Well, there is a difference in the law between providing it to someone under 21 and providing it to another party. So it's, in other words, if you're under 21 is under Rule 25.00.
So it's because there's
If
two
anyone
different,
can't, no, excuse me, go on.
is it, so it's, so there's a reason, it's because there's two different ways to enforce it?
So again, nobody on campus can possess this, but what we're saying is because we hold people responsible for their behavior, there are laws within the law that are more stringent if someone is
Okay, got it.
providing it to another party under 21. And then sale, distribution, or provision of marijuana, because it's way down the road, when the law is going to come up about if it's going to be sellable by individuals. Right now, it's not approved. So right now, that's illegal too, to sell it. Your personal possession, if you're over 21, can occur off campus, but the law states you can't give it to someone or sell it to someone under 21. I think I'm trying to think about how else we could say it except for to those under 21.
I think clarification helped. That you just said. It's just kind of like, this is the campus policy, and then here's the more specific New York State and how it fits in.
Well, I just think also there's a difference when the state policy, when we see what those consequences are. There's a difference between giving marijuana to your friend off campus, giving marijuana to your friend, let's say on the campus, or providing it to someone under 21 on the campus. So that's the law sees that as much more serious. And so that's why we separated out the behavior.
That makes sense.
Okay, and is there any further discussion? Oh,
Just
Julie?
one more quick clarifying question under 25.03. I see that the language was chosen to use while ability impaired as opposed to while under the influence. Is there?
Because it is not illegal, just as alcohol is not illegal to possess in your body, right? If you had a beer off campus, then you ingested a beer. If you smoked marijuana off campus, you smoked marijuana. But if you fail a sobriety test, which is an ability impaired assessment, and that is a breaking of a local, state, or federal law, it's about the assessment by law enforcement that your ability was impaired by a substance. That's when it crosses the line of putting other people in danger. So, and there's a lot we're not going into because, about if someone is stopped and there's a smell of marijuana, they can't be arrested and searched like they used to. I mean, the law is much more liberal than it was, or generous than it was. But this is saying if you're driving erratically on campus and after you're assessed for your, whether you're impaired, whether that's sobriety test, touching your nose, walking, whatever they do, when that's assessed by a law enforcement person, if you're a danger to others, because you can't, it's not like blowing a 0.08 or 0.1, that kind of thing. But whatever the assessment is, if it's determined that you're arrested for driving while ability impaired, that's a separate behavior. Not about if you smell like marijuana.
Okay, great. Thank you.
There's no qualitative or quantitative test, or is there any aid like a BAC or a breathalyzer that you have to show actual impairment, I think, under the law, and that's done by how the person drove, and then marry that to that they have it in their system. So that's why they use the term impairment rather than influence. They have to be actually impaired. Okay. So any other questions or comments? So do I hear a motion to amend the student handbook, the proposed editing that's reflected in the handout. Eleanor?
So
Yes,
moved.
I propose to amend the handbook
Okay,
according to Robin's words.
thank you. Is that a second from Ron?
Yes.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Everybody. So it carries, and the student handbook will be edited to reflect these changes. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for your time, folks, and let's all have a good end to the semester. Stay well. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Robin, thanks.
Aye.
And then lastly, just the budget update. Michelle, if you'd care to tell us how we're doing.
Sure. So last we spoke, we still were awaiting the state budget. And I think you all received the communication that President Christian and I sent out to the campus community about 2 weeks ago. So I'll just summarize that for you here. First and foremost, the executive budget that was put out in January called for contractual increases to our faculty and staff to be held until 2023. That was not put forward with the enacted budget. So our contractual salary increases dating back to as early as last April will start to be paid in the near future. I think the pay release dates are coming soon to us. Although the governor's message to, his press release said that these were fully funded, that really means that the appropriation is there, the authority to spend is there, but the campus still bears the burden of coming up with the cash to back them. So while we're really pleased with this result for our faculty and staff, it does put us back in the same situation we were going to be in anyway when we eventually had to pay these in 2023. It just moved the timeline up for those payments. Then in direct taxpayer support, back in March, we actually received the full funding for the 2019-20 for last fiscal year. So that was about a $2 million increase to our cash balances in March for last fiscal year. So that was good. The 5% that was held back in the beginning of this year still stands. So we're going to see a 5% reduction in our state taxpayer support for this year. But then next year it's restored. And we'll be back up to the full $15.9 million that the state provides to the campus. So again, that was good news. Then what we affectionately refer to as the TAP gap. The maximum TAP award for a full-time undergraduate student who lived in New York used to be $5,165. It's now been raised to $5,665. So a $500 increase in that for our students. The TAP gap part of it was, what is the full-time tuition, which is over $7,000 now, and what's the maximum TAP? That difference between that, which was about $1,900, is borne by the campus. So next year that will shrink to $1,400, and they propose to phase the TAP gap out by 2024-25. So that's also good news. That'll be a great assistance to the campus. Right now, our TAP gap runs us about $3 million a year in reduced revenues. Another great thing for our students, but a little challenging for the campus, is that the state has decided that we're going to hold tuition flat for our undergraduate in-state students for the next 3 years. So while our students will have that even playing field to be able to understand what their finances are going to be when they go into college, that the increases that the tuition rates afforded the campus enabled us to keep up with things like collective bargaining increases. So now we don't have that card in up our sleeve to pay those increases anymore. But again, great news for our students. And then on the capital budget side, it's pretty much the same it was last year, with the addition of $100 million in funding for the entire university
that the campus can compete for, in addition to the lump part of the capital appropriation that we can compete for. But the difference between the $100 million and what they affectionately called the lump last year is that we could use it for new initiatives, whereas the critical maintenance money that we've gotten in the past couple of years can only be used to renovate old buildings. So we can compete for a portion of the $100 million as well. So our share of the capital budget in the past couple of years has been about $4.6 million. This year, we're just a tad higher than we were last year, and we'll take every penny that we can get. So that's it on the enacted budget. Let me just see. So we're at the point of the year where we're putting together, SUNY will put together its ask for us to provide them with our enrollment target for next year. So my new best friend, Jeff Gant, and his crew are actively seeking to enroll a decent sized incoming freshman and transfer class. And we're actively seeking to get back some of the students that may have stopped out. We'll be putting together the revenue plan based on those numbers, and together with the state support, which we know now is fully funded, we'll come up with a budget for next year, a revenue target. And then we'll seek to look at our expenses and see what the disparity in the revenues versus expenses will be for next year. As for this year, I know I've been saying this all year. I usually provide you with that spreadsheet that shows our current revenues versus our current expenditures. Even though we have more information about the state support, we don't have it all. And in addition, the systems that we use to calculate our expenditures, what they are now versus what we expect to be paid before the end of the fiscal year, they're still not where we need them to be for me to give you any kind of an accurate number. So I won't be sharing those probably until the fiscal year is over. But with that, I'll take any questions.
One quick comment, just to be sure what Michelle said is clear here, that the capital that can be used for new construction is $100 million across the entire SUNY system. And for scale on that, as we shared in our memo, the current estimate of a new academic building that we need is about $60 million. So it's not at all clear where that $100 million will go.
Okay. Well, thanks, Michelle. It seems like it's going to get through the really hard time, but you really don't know right now. Is that right?
Our challenges are not done yet, Eli.
Okay. And next year looks like maybe on an even keel, but there's going to be some inventive numbers moving to have no tuition increase, but to have the inflationary increases and everything else.
Yeah, so the gap will be widening because our revenues aren't going to keep up with our expenses.
Right. So what we hope that the winds will change direction and there'll be a windfall that drops in to make up the difference. Is that the plan?
Maybe we should start playing the lottery. I don't know.
Okay, scratch off.
Yeah.
Okay, or else Jeff will get a lot of out-of-staters and make up out of the country or out of state and make up the difference. Well, thank you. I know it's not easy. And does anybody else have any other new business or old business? Well, I just want to thank everybody for participating. I certainly want to thank all the faculty and staff for what's been a challenging year, and most of all for meeting the challenge, probably exceeding any type of expectations. Certainly with the health of the student body, that it was maintained, that there was no serious illness or death, which is amazing considering the number of people on campus. And furthermore, in just getting through the year and doing it with a lot of ingenuity and coming up with a plan. And I know the students had the challenges, faculty and staff had challenges, and they were met very well and exceeded what I think anybody could imagined at the beginning. I don't think anybody anticipated things would drag on like this, or be as bad, but it was external, not internal. And I'm sorry for Haley that she couldn't have had a more on-campus experience. Hopefully, maybe in the fall, she'll get a little bit, I don't know where you're student teaching, but maybe in graduate school here or somewhere else. But I want to thank you all. I want to thank you for attending and putting in your efforts. And I wish you, okay, yes, Don.
I think Haley has a hand up.
She did, but she was muted. So
I
she
just wanted to
unmuted
give
herself.
I just wanted to give a very brief update going off of Michelle, just for you all to know that the Student Association recently passed the referendum for the student activity fee. So for those of you that don't know, the SUNY Board of Trustees requires us every 2 years to put up a vote to the student body whether or not the fee that the Student Association administers to allow for programming for clubs and organizations and mental health support and transportation services, as well as other things. I wanted to share that that passed. It was a little difficult to try and get out the vote during this time, but we passed it. We had to meet a threshold of 10% of the student body, and we just hit the mark. We did a little bit over that amount, so I wanted to share that. And also say that I believe this is my last college council meeting, so I appreciate the opportunity to work with you all. And I will be student teaching in this area in the fall. I'll still be living in New Paltz, but I hopefully will get my placement soon.
Oh, good. Well, thank you very much for your participation and fulfilling your responsibilities for your student body that you represented, which you did very well. It's going to not be another meeting. This is the one that concludes, so we'll see everybody in the fall. Hopefully it'll be a safe and productive summer. Hopefully your exams will go fine, and at the end of the year will not be too stressful, and that'll end with commencement, which will be quite joyous for one and all, both faculty, staff, and most especially the students. So that being it, anybody make a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
I'll second. I think I'm the only one here other than Haley. And so happy summer or happy spring. And we'll see you in the fall. And thank everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.